If you're a gun owner in Massachusetts, you're going to have some issues. Basically, it renders your permit pretty much useless. You have to register all your firearms, anything that's owned past 1994. And if you don't comply to that, you're basically subjecting yourself to law enforcement knocking down your door and confiscating your firearms. This is real bad news for any gun owner that lives in Massachusetts. And that's why the National Association for Gun Rights issued a travel advisory for anyone who lives in Massachusetts or is traveling to Massachusetts who's a gun owner. Basically, pack your bags and leave.
The National Association for Gun Rights issues a travel advisory for the state of Massachusetts, even to go as far as to tell current residents they should leave. Welcome to another installment of the Connecticut Gun Bench. Today's video is brought to you by P.A.N. Firearms, LLC. P.A.N. Firearms, the NRA certification and multifaceted gun training. You can reach us at 203-300-6343 or use our website at www.panfirearmsllc.com. As always, there'll be a link in the description box below. And if you like my channel, like my content, and what I do here, you can support me at the link in the description box. Everything is appreciated. Let's talk about this. And this is a fascinating story. But the NAGR, National Association for Gun Rights, is issuing a travel advisory and even going as far as to tell people to leave blue states after Massachusetts lawmaker there proposed a House bill called 4420, which, if passed, will be the strictest gun law in the country. Now, you saw a little bit of so I'm going to go ahead and play the rest of it, make sure you have context, so let's go ahead and watch that.
If Massachusetts makes House Docket 4420 law, Massachusetts will become the most anti-gun state in the country. I'm Austin Hine. I'm the Director of Political Operations with the National Association for Gun Rights. Massachusetts has had assault weapons banned since 1993 under the federal law signed by Bill Clinton, but it was actually codified and made permanent by Governor Mitt Romney back in 2004. So what Massachusetts is trying to do is take what they already have, which is already an egregious anti-gun law, and double down on it and expand it way beyond any other state that we've ever seen. This is going to pretty much apply to every semi-automatic firearm. The bill also goes so far as to allow law enforcement to demand that you show your permit without cause. That's basically a stop and frisk policy. That includes registration for all firearms, including magazines and feeding devices, with no grandfather clause. And with no grandfather clause, that means that law enforcement can kick down your door at any time and demand your weapons or magazines. This is a ban on anyone under the age of 21 carrying a semi-automatic weapon. It also applies to 15 to 18-year-olds when it comes to mace and pepper spray. This also changes the definition of firearms to include stun guns, because I honestly think they just want to leave you defenseless. The bill also places new restrictions on carrying of firearms at businesses, basically saying that unless a business expressly allows carrying of firearms in their business, it's illegal to do so, and you'll be criminally charged with trespassing if you do. And even more of a silly part of it, they're actually banning human silhouette targets, which is something that I've never seen before. It's kind of funny, unless you're law enforcement, which maybe that tells you something. What Massachusetts is clearly trying to do here is basically repeal the Second Amendment as we know it. And they're trying to basically outlaw guns. If you're a gun owner in Massachusetts, you're going to have some issues. Basically, it renders your permit pretty much useless. You have to register all your firearms, anything that's owned past 1994. And if you don't comply to that, you're basically subjecting yourself to law enforcement knocking down your door and confiscating your firearms. This is real bad news for any gun owner that lives in Massachusetts. And that's why the National Association for Gun Rights issued a travel advisory for anyone who lives in Massachusetts or is traveling to Massachusetts who's a gun owner. Basically, pack your bags and leave, because it's untenable if this thing passes. The Supreme Court ruled in Bruin that unless a law specifically is in line with the text, history, and tradition of the Second Amendment, then that means it's unconstitutional. And so what the Supreme Court is saying here is that unless laws like these existed in 1791 when the Constitution was ratified, that they're in violation of the Constitution. Massachusetts is basically giving a middle finger to that. HD 4420 is the most anti-gun bill I have ever seen in my career as a gun rights lobbyist, and it needs to be defeated. The Constitution is clear. You have an individual right to keep and bear arms, and Massachusetts is saying no. Laws like this will only leave vulnerable people more vulnerable.
Heard that and you saw that. Now, with what happened in Connecticut with the passing of HB 6667, there is obviously a cabal of liberal states. I say liberal, and they're really not liberal. They're almost authoritarian fascists, but liberal in the modern day definition of the word liberal. There seems to be this race to see who can be the most restrictive. It's like they're trying to say, look at me, look at what I've done. But they do things that have nothing to do with actual crime, because they claim that this is all about gun violence. But then they pass laws that don't combat the actual problem. And all of them are doing it. It's not just Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, California. They're all doing it. And unfortunately, they're leaving people absolutely defenseless. But I'm going to come into here, and this is a gun group tells residents to consider moving from blue state after lawmaker proposes gun control. New firearm control bill is real bad news for Massachusetts gun owners, says group. Firearm owners should avoid travel to Massachusetts and should consider moving if they already live there, according to a gun rights organization concerned about a gun control bill making its way through the state legislature. Quote, if Massachusetts makes House Docket 4420 law, Massachusetts will become the most anti-gun in the country, Austin Hine, the director of political operations for the National Association for Gun Rights, told Fox News. What Massachusetts is clearly doing here is basically repeal the Second Amendment as we know it, he added. The 140-page omnibus bill, an act of modernizing firearm laws, makes sweeping changes to Massachusetts gun laws. This includes mandating that all firearms and feeding devices be registered. Wow. Banning people under 21 from buying or carrying a semi-automatic shotgun or rifle, banning concealed carry of firearms on private property unless expressly permitted, and much more. This is real bad news for any gun owner that lives in Massachusetts, Hines said. Basically, pack your bags and leave because it's untenable if this thing passes. Yeah, it is. The National Association for Gun Rights issued a travel advisory for anyone who lives in Massachusetts or is traveling in Massachusetts because of the bill last week. The bill also cracks down on firearm adjacent areas, including banning targets with human silhouettes at ranges, banning people under the age of 18 from possessing mace or pepper spray, and adding stun guns under the definition of firearms. So what this bill will actually do is prohibit a young high school girl from being able to defend herself, even with mace, Hines said. I think the states are trying to ban stun guns because I honestly think they just want to leave you defenseless. Well, yeah. Hine also slammed the requirement for gun owners to register their firearms and magazine. Registration leads to confiscation, Hine said. If you are putting yourself on a government list of what firearms you own and how many you own, best be sure that the government is going to be knocking on your door one day. Hine added that he thinks a provision in the bill would create a stop and frisk-like policy to become law. The bill also goes so far as to allow law enforcement to demand that you show your permit without cause, Hine said. That basically a stop and frisk policy, which is another anti-gun policy. Hine called the section banning firing silhouettes at shooting clubs silly. Quote, what the state is saying now is that since you are shooting a human silhouette, that basically violence of some sort, he said. So they want to ban those and leave the human silhouette targets to law enforcement only, which I mean, take that for what you will. The bill also hopes to address the Supreme Court's New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin ruling last year that upheld the right to carry a weapon in public. The lawsuit was over a New York law, which we know, which required those wishing to carry in public to prove that they have special need. Massachusetts previously had a similar law before the 2022 ruling. So what Massachusetts is trying to do is take what they already have, which is already an egregious anti-gun law, and double down on it and expand it way beyond any other state we've ever seen. I said, adding that this legislation is basically giving a middle finger to the Bruin decision. Well, a lot of states are doing that. New York, as soon as Bruin was, basically became the ruling on Bruin came out, What happened? New York started passing restrictive carry laws, as other states started doing. So, okay. The bill also expands the Bay State's red flag law by adding employers, school administrators, and various medical professionals to the list of people able to ask a judge to suspend the license of a firearm owner who may pose a risk to themselves or others. See, now, I've always had a problem with that because anybody can make an accusation against anyone, and that's where it gets dangerous. That's why I have a problem with red flag laws. It's not that there's a hearing to determine if the person is a problem. It's plain and simply somebody makes the accusation, and a judge then issues a warrant to go pick up this person's personal property, and then they have to go to court to fight it. That's not a good look. The Democrat representative who introduced the bill and chairs the Joint Judiciary Committee, Representative Michael Day, was tasked by the Massachusetts House Speaker Ronald J. Mariano with developing the legislation of the past year. While the Commonwealth's gun laws are among the best in the nation, unrelated acts of violence and the Supreme Court's deleterious Bruin decision demanded legislative action both here in Massachusetts and on the federal level, Speaker Mariano said on the day the legislation was unveiled, according to WWLP. You just realize he's not talking about his protection. His protection remains the same. He's talking about protecting the general public. But Mariano added he hopes their work in Massachusetts will serve as a national model for Congress and other states, just like they said here in Connecticut. And then old Biden trucked his ass up here to go speak at the Safer Community Summit, which is a bunch of crap. These people, it's like I said, it's like a competition. They're all in competition to see who can be the most egregious when it comes to the Constitution. Look at me. I'm doing nothing, but I look good. It's unbelievable. They also took aim at the Supreme Court, claiming neither a rogue Supreme Court nor increasingly sophisticated criminal activity will stop lawmakers from ensuring the health and safety of residents by making laws that only the law-abiding residents will follow. This is their answer. You now see how twisted this is. In a statement according to the Boston Globe, the bill also hopes to address ghost guns by requiring receivers and barrels, the parts necessary to build a gun, to be registered. Barrels also, and have a serial number? The Boston Police Department reported a 280% increase in ghost gun recoveries from 2019 to 2021, according to Day's office. Yeah, but those are, once again, you're making the public, you're holding the public to a higher standard than the criminals. The criminals are not registering anything. You get so frustrated with these people. They cannot be this ignorant. They can't. But it will do nothing to curb illegal firearm manufacturing, Hines said. Anyone with access to an internet and 3D printer can print a low receiver in just a few hours. The left is more rabid than ever when it comes to trying to ban guns, and they're doing so as an open defiance to the Supreme Court, Hines said. They're trying to challenge the legitimacy of the Supreme Court and the Constitution itself. And you heard him say laws like this will only leave vulnerable people more vulnerable, which is partly the goal, because if you leave vulnerable people more vulnerable, it makes them more vulnerable to crime, which lets the criminals run rampant, which means more crime, which gives them the grease and the fodder that they need to keep passing laws like this. That's the game. That is the game. They're not interested in nobody's safety. They want the chaos. They want the crime. They want the violence, because they can use it to pass gun control. Look at what happened here. That's why we need gun control. They did not respond to a request for comment. What a shock. All right, let's come out of that. Not surprising. Now, the NAGR issuing a travel advisory, well, that's neither here nor there, because if I was living there, I guess at some point I would consider packing up and leaving. But that's on the person who lives in the state. But this slew of anti-gun bills, which literally is I've said this way back when Bruin was first, ruled upon and decided. I said that there's going to be a flood of gun control bills coming from certain states, and it's happening, as you can see. Okay? Because I guarantee you, we just did HB 6667 in Connecticut. I tell people all the time, pay attention to what's happening, because crime is not going to go down. And they're going to use these gun control bills as a foundation for the next set of gun control laws. Another year, and that you're on the internet, and Lamont will be in front of the cameras again saying we need to do more. We need more bans. That's all they're going to do. If they pass this law, next year they're demanding even more. And this whole thing of serializing barrels, what the hell is that all about? The barrel, what, somebody's going to use it like a blowpipe? You know, like put poison darts and starts blowing them down a barrel? No, it's not going to happen. So what is the point of serializing a barrel? Receiver, frame, whatever you want to refer to it as, is the central component, and that's the part that should be serialized. Everything else is irrelevant, because without the frame or receiver, you get nowhere. But once again, like I said, I can't. These people can't be that ignorant. There's got to be a cabal going on here, a conversation among all these states as to how should we coordinate with each other to keep doing what we're doing. And they always demand, well, this should be at the federal level also. To do what? It's not going to change the face of crime. It never does. Never does. But we know what at the end, once again, we know the end game. Those of us paying attention, we know what the end game is. Is literally to disarm the public. That's what this is about. But here's another step to do so. But let me know what you think. As always, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. And as always, any statements of violence or statements that lead to violence will be removed. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're notified the next time a video goes live. I will see you on the next one. Peace.